So to make the frosting for this cake, we need to slip stitch join the white yarn onto the remaining front loops from round 4. So I'm going to put the cake aside for now and first just show you how to make a slip knot, which is how we start the slip stitch join. So lay your yarn out horizontally, pick up the cut off side of the yarn, and loop the yarn around itself once. So it's intersecting once, and you've got a loop of yarn now. Now we're going to pick up the edge of this new loop and fold it like you're turning the page of a book so that this loop is on top of the rest of the yarn. Now we're going to pick up the yarn that is in the middle of this loop with one hand and pick up the yarn tail, the cut off part of the yarn, with the other, and pull tight until a knot is formed. This is a slip knot. Then we got to put the slip knot on our hook. If you're right-handed, you want the knot to be to the left of your hook. And if you're left-handed, you want the knot to be to the right of your hook. The important thing is that you're going to grab onto the yarn that is still connected to the yarn ball and pull until that knot is almost right next to the hook. You want to make it so that the loop that's on your hook is the size of the tip of your hook. So don't put that knot all the way right next to the hook, because that would make it really difficult to crochet. Notice how this part of the hook is narrower than this part of the hook. Okay, so now we got a slip knot. Let's bring our cake back. So we crocheted the cake from the bottom up. So you're probably holding on to the cake like this. By the way, if you forgot which side's the bottom versus the top, it doesn't super matter actually, because you can decide, since it's symmetrical, which way is which. If you really care about that, the way that you can tell is the top is the side that had the magic loop. See how you can see these V's going around in spirals versus the bottom, which looks a little bit more messy because we were doing a bunch of decreased stitches. All right, what we really care about is we need to look for the ridge of remaining front loops, and you can use your finger to find it. It's going to be around where the edge of the cake is. And in particular, we are looking for the spot where the ridges jump. So here's the gap. We have a ridge down here, and then the ridge that's at the end of this round is all the way up here. So we want to put our hook under the ridge that's on the bottom. So now it looks like we got 2 loops on our hook, one in white, one in pink. Now to do the slip stitch join, we are going to yarn over and pull the white yarn through both loops on the hook. So now I'm left with just one white loop on the hook. That is the slip stitch join. Step 2, we're going to make 3 chain stitches. So to do a chain stitch, we're going to yarn over and bring the yarn through the loop that's on the hook. That was chain stitch number 1. Here's 2, and here's 3. Now we are going to do a slip stitch in exactly the same spot as the slip stitch join. And that should be pretty easy to see because we're working in 2 different colors. So you can see where the white yarn loops under the pink yarn. That is where you want to do your slip stitch. So stick your hook in that same hole. And I got a little tip for you here. If you want to reduce the number of yarn tails that you're going to have to hide later on, you can also drape the yarn tail of the white yarn on top of the hook, so you crochet over it as you do this. All right, so slip stitch again is yarning over and bringing that yarn through all the loops that are on your hook. And we're basically going to repeat that many, many times. So again, you're going to chain 3, so yarn over, bring the yarn through the loop on your hook. That was 1 chain, yarn over again, bring that yarn through the loop on your hook, that was chain number 2, yarn over, bring that yarn through the loop on your hook, that is chain number 3. Then this time we actually want to put a slip stitch in the next remaining front loop. So not the one that this chain of white stitches is going into, which I can tell because I can see where that yarn is hooked under and pulling. I want to put the hook under the next front loop and do a slip stitch here. Remember, a slip stitch is simply yarning over and bringing the yarn through everything that is on your hook. So we're going to actually repeat that sequence a total of 19 times. You might lose count, and my big secret here is it doesn't really matter because it's going to look like one big mound of frosting anyway, so people probably won't notice if you make a mistake. But the other way you can tell in case you lose count, since 19 is kind of a big number, you're just going to do this until you have no more stitches to crochet into. And I will meet you there. Okay, I have stopped because I've made 19 frills, but also more importantly, I've stopped because there's no more front loops for me to crochet into, which means we're almost at the end. We're going to do one last chain of 3 chain stitches, and now we are going to slip stitch into the same exact stitch as that original slip stitch join. So we don't want to have this gap anymore, which is why we're doing the slip stitch. And the way you can find that is again by looking for that first ridge of pink that the first chain of white yarn went into, which is here. And when we do a slip stitch, now this looks like one smooth continuous rim of frosting. And to finish this up, we're going to fasten off. So yarn over, pull the yarn through the loop that's on the hook, and then we're going to hide this yarn tail. So cut the yarn about 6 inches away from the hook, and then keep on pulling your hook all the way through until you've got a nice tight knot that's formed. Now to hide the yarn tails, you can thread a tapestry needle and then stick the needle somewhere close to where this slip stitch was into the cake. Pull it out some other point of the cake. And then you can just cut that yarn as close to the surface as possible. And since I had crocheted over this other yarn tail, I don't have to bother hiding that one. I can just go ahead and cut that yarn tail as well. And that is the frosting on the top of the cake. You're going to repeat what you just did for the bottom of the cake. And just make sure that you hold on to your cake in the same orientation. So the top of the cake is currently possibly counterintuitively on the bottom. So when you crochet the bottom frosting, just keep holding it this way.